Frantic. That's the word they use to describe the dead flakes. To me, it was just weather, bitter, yes, but dependable in its way. The skin flakes crunched underfoot as I climbed the cobbled hill, my hands tucked into my coat against the usual sour wind. Overhead, the manor loomed, its spires clawing at the gray sky like desperate fingers. Ravenlung Manor always looked like it had something to prove. I stopped halfway up to brush a particularly stubborn flake from my lapel, a skin flake clinging to a gentleman's coat. Unsightly. Old habits from Deluxe died hard. At least there, the rain was water. I adjusted my hat and pushed on, the scent of rust and damp earth thickening the closer I got to the towering redwood door. The door's carved clown face twitched as I approached, its wooden nose sniffing audibly. I rolled my eyes and tapped it twice, watching as the carved lips twisted into a pout. On the third knock, the door creaked open, revealing the butler, a sagging, naked figure held together by sheer force of habit. His tongue flicked out, tasting the air, and he gave a moan that sounded almost like a greeting. "Good to see you too, old chap," I said, stepping inside and stomping the flakes from my boots. "I need to speak with Lady Ravenlung. She's expecting me." The butler didn't answer, of course, but gestured with a hand that might have been missing a few fingers last time I saw him. I followed him inside, the door shutting behind us with a groan that muffled the faint sound of zombies singing out on the lawn. The foyer hadn't changed. Heads still lined the walls, preserved with a polish that bordered on reverence. Chandeliers of stained glass threw colorful shadows across the marble floor, while the grand staircase curved upward like a spine. Elegant, grotesque, and entirely too Ravenlung. As we walked, I caught sight of her, dusk, standing at her easel at the end of the hall. The sight brought a rare warmth to my chest. Small, pale, and black-haired, she moved with the kind of slow, deliberate care I'd only seen in those deeply lost in thought. Her brush glided across the canvas, painting something I'd learned long ago not to look too closely at without bracing myself. "Dusk," I called, stepping closer. "Still hard at work, I see." Her head tilted slightly, acknowledging me, but her eyes stayed on the painting. I stopped a few paces away, close enough to see what she was working on. It was, well, torture, as usual. A room filled with smiling figures, some dangling from chains, others wielding whips. Their faces were alight with manic glee, giggling and laughing despite the blood pooling at their feet. "Charming," I murmured. "You've really captured the joy of the occasion." She didn't respond. Her brush moved with measured precision, laying down a streak of red that could have been blood. Or worse. Finally, she glanced up, her dark eyes meeting mine. Her expression, as always, was a perfect blank. "I think I'd like to paint you one day," she said, her voice soft and toneless. "Me?" I chuckled, tugging my coat straighter. "Well, I'm flattered. What sort of scene are we talking about? Something respectable, I hope." Her gaze flicked back to the canvas. "Maybe," she said. "You and a poisonous asp, perhaps, wrestling it. I wonder which of you would win, the venom or the old man." I snorted, unable to help the smile tugging at my lips. Let's hope we never find out. I'd hate to disappoint. She didn't know I'd killed a very nasty snake once. Long ago, far more venomous than any old asp. But those were happier days. She didn't laugh. Dusk never laughed. But there was a flicker of something in her eyes. Amusement? Maybe. Or maybe just the light. Either way, I reached out and gently patted her shoulder. "You're getting better," I said, nodding at the painting. "The details are sharper. You've got a good eye, Dusk." "Thanks," she murmured, already turning back to her work. I needed in that moment and almost made a mistake. But I had business. I lingered for a moment longer, watching her in the soft, fractured light. There was something comforting about her stillness, her quiet focus. Dusk might have been the strangest soul I'd met in Sty, no small feat, but she was dear to me all the same. Perhaps I was just biased. "Well," I said, stepping back, "I'd best see your mistress. Don't work too hard, all right?" She didn't respond at first, her brush already moving again, but just as I turned to leave, she said softly, "Don't get eaten by grandmother." I chuckled under my breath. "I'll do my best." As I followed the butler deeper into the manor, I felt the familiar weight of its oppressive atmosphere settle around me. This was Ravenlung Manor, after all. If you weren't feeling a little uneasy, you weren't paying attention. "Barleyman, baby boy, come in, Lily Ravenlung croaked, her voice crackling like dry twigs in a fire. The ancient woman sat perched on an antique sofa, a relic of teeth and flesh that lived, a centerpiece of Ravenlung Manor's finest quality. Wrapped in a fraying pink bathrobe, she looked more ghoul than person. Her wispy white hair floated in all directions, like a cobweb disturbed, and her wide, maddened eyes gleamed with a faint, unsettling light. She was the kind of old woman who haunted children's nightmares, at least those of the children of worlds beyond dear old Octovious. Not for what she might do, but for what she was, an embodiment of creeping dread. A cracked china teacup rested precariously in her claw-like hand, the liquid inside dark and sludgy as tar. "Do sit down now, Barleyman," Lily implored. "On the green chair, right there. No, not the red one. It's not been fed today." As I sat down, the chair I had been directed to began to devour me. I was sinking into the thing. Obviously, it too had not been fed. "Enough of that," croaked Lily, striking my chair with a black whip. The sinister embrace withdrew immediately, and I knew I had been spared, at least for now. Now, Barleyman. Tell me this is a pleasuring visit." "Not today, my dear putrid flower," I said solemnly. "Business, bad business. There's been an attack in Sty, and I've come to call on the talents of the little ones." "What needs us? Who wants us? Why need us?" Adrian Ravenlung's knife hovered dangerously at my throat. I hadn't heard him slip in. Perhaps he'd been lurking in the shadows all along. Looking up at the feral boy, the twin brother of Dusk, his face a twisted reflection of his sister's, I offered a smile. "Morning, Adrian," I said. Adrian pressed the knife's blade deeper into my neck. "Gotta cut you, yep. I cut you, right? I held my smile. "You first, dear boy." I have, 17 times today. You next?" Lily waved her hand dismissively at Adrian, ordering him off to his bedroom. Without hesitation, he lunged at her, feral and furious, snarling as he shouted, "You're a mean old grandma, and I want to push you out of a window and onto a spike." With that, he stormed off, slashing at the air with his knife like a wild animal. I watched him go, a smile creeping onto my face. "He's growing into a fine young man, Lily." "Indeed he is!" Lily almost shouted, her voice thick with madness. As she spoke, her tongue flicked out, greedily devouring a small cockroach that had slinked across her arm. "But he can't have you. I'm the only one who gets to carve you open, Barleyman dear. Sweetheart that you are." I gave her a steady glance, not flinching. "On the matter at hand, remember how the kids helped me out with that case at Tango Town? I could use their talents again." Lily's smile faltered for a moment, and she leaned in closer. "What's happened in Sty, then?" I sighed. "It's Bloodbooger Zoo. There was a mass breakout. All of the animals are rampaging. There have already been deaths. And worse, droppings. It's absolute chaos out there." Lily's eyes gleamed with excitement. "Droppings, eh?" Have you collected any? I'd pay Sty Operations handsomely for 17 ounces of Glangfoshicon droppings, perfect for stews. I shook my head. Commander Sybil won't let us touch those droppings. He's having them examined for any traces of Darkard remnants. Lily spat black tar onto the floor with disgust. Foul, Commander Sybil! Utterly worthless, crownless thing! I nodded. There's a definite possibility of Darkard activity. These animals are moving with eerie coordination, their attacks almost strategic. Something's controlling them. Dusk and Adrian have abilities that could be useful in examining the crime scene. Lily's eyes widened with concern. And Peppersnout, my beloved pestilent beast, he's escaped too? I sighed. Unfortunately, yes. He was one of the first to break free. They think he made for the lowlands, and he seemed crazed. Lily tisked, shaking her head. Poor dear, those filthy lowlanders won't know how to appreciate him. Will you allow me to bring them? I asked intently. Lily shook her head grumpily. Poor Peppersnout. Well, if the little brats want to go along with you, they can do as they please. This is a matter of the Ravenlung name. I had that beast bred. It carries my family's mark, branded upon its back. I'd need your signed permission for them to— No legalities, Barlaman! None at all! She snapped. Dusk! Dusk! Get in here at once and bring that vicious imp of a brother of yours! Outside there was a rough scuffling, the sounds of a struggle, a hiss like a snake's warning, and a string of curses. Moments later, Dusk marched into the room, dragging Adrian along behind her, a chain attached to a collar around his neck. And the feral boy glared at them all, making faces and clutching his knife like it might protect him, seething with rage. Take it off! He roared at Dusk. Take it off! In a moment, Dusk replied in her usual monotone. Calm down now, Master Adrian, I implored. I'm aiming to get you out of the house for a bit. There's been an unfortunate incident in town. Oh, I bet you are, bleedy one. Dusk released her grip on his chain, and Adrian immediately scampered away into a dark corner, clutching his knife tightly, hissing and watching them with open disgust. Dusk, however, didn't even glance at him. She stared deeply into my eyes, stared so intensely, so ceaselessly, that I almost felt exposed beneath her unblinking gaze. I explained to them the details of the incident at Bloodbooger, outlining Sty Operations' fears of Darkard involvement. Dusk listened intently, though her unreadable expression left me to assume she was following along. For all I knew, she had transcended her body and wasn't even truly present in the room. After some moments, Dusk said, I wonder why a Darkard would be interested in breaking animals out of a zoo. Seems foolish, a waste of time. Seems more like the prank of a witchling. I let out a weary sigh. Prank or not, Dusk, there's been death. I love death, she breathed, and for a fleeting moment, her tone carried an almost dreamy airiness. It passed as quickly as it came, and she nodded. Fine. I was growing bored with my painting anyway, and with grandmother's incessant whining. Her gaze shifted to Adrian, who was whispering fiercely to his knife as if arguing with it. I suppose the dog needs walking too. Dusk's eyes snapped back to me. What evidence do you have of Darkard involvement? I shivered a little. Just a small bit of what I might call evidence, though I suppose anyone could have made the mark, Darkard or not. A burn in the stone outside of the zoo gates, made from Geelix fire, the insignia of pleasure. Lily's eyes widened with excitement. Dolos! The mark of Dolos! Dusk blinked twice. Dolos, a nice enough demon.